So I'd like to welcome all of you to our end of the semester, our last for the semester. It's winding down very quickly. Campus Safety Town Hall, sponsored by the COPS Advisory Committee. We've had several times where we've talked to you about what the COPS Advisory Committee does, but it's a select group across campus representing constituent groups, bringing safety and security issues and concerns forward, and helping to make recommendations to the cabinet based on those concerns and issues and those kinds of things. So on our agenda today for the town hall, we're going to talk to you about we've been very busy, some new information resources related to concealed carry that you have at your fingertips. And we will review our draft weapons policy again. And there's a handout which we'll talk about in depth today because I believe hopefully that answers a lot of questions for you and will be a great resource. We have several other safety and security programs or projects underway that we would like to update all of you on and let you know what the status of those are. And I think it's just important to know that those things are happening and that we're always moving forward on ways that we can enhance campus safety and security. And then at the end, and of course as we do go, please feel free to ask questions. We will have a question and comment period at the end, but your questions are welcome as we go, especially if it's policy related. When we're talking about the policy, please ask those questions as we go. So we appreciate your time and attention today, and we will dig in. It's May. Can you folks believe it's May? At least the day's nicer. That's good. So recently, we have been very, very busy filming a concealed carry video. How many of you have watched the video already? Okay, well, the majority of you. I see a few hands that weren't raised. So for today's purposes, we will watch the video and hopefully answer any questions you have about that, just to introduce the town hall today. Thank you for joining us. We would like to take this opportunity to provide you with some foundational information about our concealed carry on campus at Johnson County Community College. Our purpose is to provide a video series to complement the implementation of our campus carry by informing faculty, staff, students, and visitors of the legislation, our policy, and best practices in order to promote a safe and secure campus environment. In this video, we will provide an overview of legislation, our policy, what can be carried, who can carry, reporting of violations, where can a handgun be carried, and storing of a handgun. Included will be scenarios and photos to help you better understand your rights and responsibilities in the implementation of our policy. Feel free to pause this video at any time. Effective July 1st, 2017, an authorized individual may carry a concealed handgun on or about their person on the campus of an institution of higher education in Kansas. It is the responsibility of the handgun holder to understand the laws, policies, rules, and regulations associated with a person's concealed carry responsibilities, rights, and privileges. After consulting with students, staff, and faculty regarding the nature of the student population, specific safety considerations, and the uniqueness of the campus environment, the Conceal and Carry Task Force made recommendations to the Board of Trustees to adopt the policy. With the approved policy, regulations, and other provisions regarding the carrying of concealed handguns by qualified individuals under Kansas law on the campus, the following concealed carry standards were adopted and implemented.
Who can carry and what can be carried?
Individuals who are 21 years of age who are in lawful possession of a handgun with no restrictions or prior record. Only legally authorized handguns are permitted on campus. Long guns are not authorized for conceal and carry. Therefore, they are not permitted on campus.
What is considered a violation of JCCC's Conceal Carry?
Partially visible or visible handguns do not meet the requirement of concealed carry, and at a minimum would be a policy violation and should be reported. These are examples of approved concealed carry.
Who do I report to about a concealed carry violation at JCCC?
Any person who believes someone has violated the JCCC concealed carry or has questions about someone violating the campus's concealed carry should contact the campus police department at 913-469-2500 or extension 4111 from an interior telephone.
Where can I carry a handgun?
Individuals will be able to conceal carry in public buildings and areas on a JCCC campus, except where temporary adequate security measures are in place. If temporary ASMs are in place, signs will clearly identify where concealed carry is prohibited.
Can I store my handgun?
A handgun may only be stored in your private vehicle when the vehicle is locked and the handgun is secured in a non-visible location. A handgun may not be stored in an office, nor in a work area, nor any college locker.
Where can I find out more about JCCC's concealed carry policies, procedures, and safety information?
For more information about concealed carry at JCCC, go to the Concealed Carry webpage at jccc.edu/concealed-carry for the legislation, our policy, instructional videos, and frequently asked questions, along with links to other emergency preparedness information. The safety and security of our students, staff, faculty, and all our visitors is of the utmost concern. Thank you for your attention to this concealed carry training. Okay, thank you for watching that again if you'd already seen it before. So it's a 5.5 minute video that should serve as a resource for all of you. So whether it's us showing the video during new employee orientation, new staff orientation, new faculty orientation, student orientation, resources in your classroom when the semester first kicks off, either for summer or for fall, please feel free to use this as a resource that's available to you and hopefully answer some of those questions. Any thoughts or comments related to the video initially that we should talk about here today? Nothing? And there's a few of you that may not know me, and since we're being live streamed and recorded, I'm Alisa Pacer, and I'm the emergency manager here at the college. I should have introduced myself right away, so thank you for that. No questions, no thoughts? Okay, so let's move on to the second resource that we've proposed for you, which is a summary sheet. So we call this a one-page summary or summary sheet, summary of information. We tried to keep it simple to answer the majority of the questions that we felt like people might have with relation to concealed carry as the law goes into effect. And please, and we'll talk about this just more in detail in just a moment. Please also keep in mind that since November, we have had on the Conceal Carry webpage, which you can get to one of two ways, which we just did. So there's a hot link, jccc.edu/concealed-carry, or if you just search on Concealed Carry, in the search bar on the main college webpage, you'll get to that page very easily. It's also a link off of the police department webpage. So we've tried to make sure we've linked things appropriately so that you can find the resources available to you. But the FAQ document, the frequently asked questions, has been a resource that's been out there since November. It does answer a lot of questions. I think there's 20-some questions, Q&A that we've had asked at different town halls and different feedback sessions from you folks that we've tried to address in one way, shape, or form. And then lastly, other resources is some proposed syllabus language. I don't know how many of you have heard about this coming forward, but from what I understand, as of right now, the status of that language has been sent to the IDC, so the Dean's Councils, and made available for summer semester. Knowing that July is after summer semester, July 1 is after summer semester begins. However, to make sure that we get all of our ducks in a row, so to speak, for fall. So optional as language that is put forth that's for summer, and then more information will be coming finalized down the road. Any questions about these resources? So we've been really busy. Make sense? Okay. So let's talk about the draft weapons policy and what's next. Kind of to the left here, you can see that next week we have a board meeting, the May board meeting on May 11th, and we are anticipating that the draft policy language will go before the board and be voted on to be taken into effect as policy. Okay? Just like every other policy that gets updated here at JCCC, this is the weapons policy, and it's anticipated that we will do that at next Thursday's board meeting. Okay? Yes, Dr. Larson.
Can I add that that policy language would then say effective July 1st, 2017. So if something should happen, the legislature is expected to be in session in Topeka beyond May 11th. If something were to happen, we obviously would be going back to the board with any changes to our policy based on legislative action. But we don't anticipate that. We're getting ready, and so May 11th would be when the board would be asked to take action.
Okay, so you have a handout at each of your workstations. So we all have been hearing this for a while. The legislation is effective July 1. Authorized individuals. Keep in mind when they say authorized, there's certain things that means. Number one, we know that you have to be at least 21 years of age to conceal carry. You have to be legally able to carry a weapon, so prior convictions and all of those things come into play. And our policy will line that out for all of us, okay? Just in case anyone has any further questions on that, you can go right to that. The policy basically recognizes the right of authorized individuals to carry concealed in accordance with these regulations. So we're just abiding by the policy. Abiding by the statute. Who can carry? Everything that I just mentioned before. So they have to be in lawful possession of a handgun. In other words, if they've been restricted of carrying a handgun for any reason, that's not lawful possession, okay? What can be carried? You heard the chief say in the video that long guns are not permitted. When you say a long gun, it literally, think about a long gun, a rifle, those types of things. So it's speaking about a handgun. Violation, partially or wholly visible handguns do not meet the policy requirements, and at a minimum would be a policy violation and should always be reported. Folks, we get reports of a weapon on a person, not very often, but on occasion. 99% of the time it ends up being usually a law enforcement official on this campus that's here for training, that maybe their overcoat didn't quite slide over their weapon, or maybe someone didn't see their badge appropriately, like they have it displayed. Maybe it was to the side or something like that. So there are those calls that do occur, and we would anticipate that come July 1 that we would continue to receive those calls out of concern, okay? If someone is correctly concealed carrying, we should never know they have a weapon. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Where do we want violations to be reported to? The campus police department. Hopefully all of you are familiar with the fairly recent direct line number for campus police. You should put that number in your cell phone, 913-469-2500. You can also dial 4111, as the chief said, from any interior phone. Can you also dial 2500 from interior phones? Yes. Okay. If those could be the same, they would be. I'll just say that. A long time ago. Where can a handgun be carried? So you've heard us in previous town halls talk about adequate security measures. And the law defines what adequate security measures means. It means officers that are armed, and it means metal detection type of equipment. And you have to have both. So if we were to secure either a facility or an area in a facility, we would have to put adequate security measures in place to be able to restrict weapons in that area. Or perhaps the person leasing that space for us for the event or the day would have to pay to put adequate security measures temporarily in place for that particular event. If weapons were to be restricted, signage would have to be put in place, and if it was a ticketed event, language would have to be put on that in advance for the ticketing, if that makes sense. Okay? Any questions about adequate security measures? For right now, we do not plan to put permanent adequate security measures anywhere on this campus. Okay? Let's see. Storing of a handgun. I think the video talked about storage and it was pretty clear, but basically storing a handgun is only allowed in your vehicle. Out of sight, secured, locked. So if I was going to a lab or a class where I knew that my backpack, where I normally carry my concealed weapon, could not be with me, I have to put it somewhere. Let's say I go to the testing center. I would have to take my weapon back to my vehicle, lock it up, store it, and then go to the testing center. Yeah.
And so how do we approach that in a classroom on a daily basis where some days may have activities of switching tables and moving around or moving to the front to give a speech? So it's not like a lab that you can always count on that, but on a on an everyday basis it might change.
Yeah, I think what I hear you saying is the class expectations may change, but the weapons expectation doesn't. In other words, if you can't conceal carry on or about your person and keep it there, then it's not okay.
So if they get up and move, because we have that in our classes too, if they get up and move to another space, they would need to take their backpack with them. When they're
Absolutely.
So like to the front of the room to give a speech, they're going to take the backpack.
They would have to.
Okay. So is that something we need to explain to them when class starts? I mean, at the beginning of a semester, that this is one of those places where you can't count on always having your bag with you?
Do you want to?
Yeah,
Do you want to answer
so.
that?
I mean, again, it's ultimately the responsibility of all of us and us to communicate with our students that this is the policy. And so if they cannot have their purse or backpack on their person at all times, or if they know that a class for a particular occasion, speech, whatever, that they would have to make arrangements to store that in their vehicle, or they take the bus to not bring their weapon.
Let me give you a hypothetical. I teach a class on professional skills. Generally, I think we could agree giving a professional skills speech with a backpack on fails at being professional in that regard. So are we going to be put in a position of myself as the instructor saying you have to take off your backpack in order to give your professional skills speech, and therefore assume some liability for forcing that student to either A, take a worse grade for being unprofessional, or B, violate the law by separating themselves from their concealed weapon?
And again, I guess I would say at the start of your semester, explaining that there may be circumstances within your teaching experience that you would not be able to have your backpack or purse with you. And give the students that advance notice would be my response.
Has the college looked, just as a retort to that, has the college looked at what the possible liability would be for us as instructors if we find ourselves in that situation where, even if we are completely proactive from the start of the semester, the student being a most likely gun rights advocate, if they're going to be concealed carry, that situation they might then say, I am somehow breaching their constitutional right to carry, given that Kansas is stated to be a constitutional carry state.
And I'd say we haven't looked at every potential, every possibility, but I know that our policy, as we're proposing to the board, is compliant with state statute. So I mean, we have developed this policy not to address every single circumstance, but to give ourselves a framework to be in compliance with state statute.
Fair enough, and I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying what I just described doesn't feel like an outlier scenario to me. That feels like something that is likely to happen, whether in my class or in someone else's class.
So I think the answer is if it cannot be securely on or about the person, then they need to leave it in their vehicle. And if that's not viewed as professionalism to have a backpack, I think that's a different issue, perhaps.
You can store it in a purse, and people carry a purse, but don't physically carry the purse all the time, sometimes right next to you. And we're very fortunate to have a learning environment. The people, I walk by unattended backpacks and cell phones all the time, but there are many other learning environments where that's not the case. So for a student to have it about their body could be perceived as, I carry it in my backpack, I put it next to me while I give my speech, just sitting right.
That's true. That's true. And I would. Right.
And if we were in a different learning environment, that in a lot of schools, students don't leave personal property more than arm's reach away.
Yeah, Lisa.
Does it announce, I'm back to my speech class, does it announce to the class that I have a gun if I'm one of two students who chooses to bring their backpack up to the front of the room? And does that cause any problem? I mean, is that somehow comparable to being visible by saying?
I mean, a person could tell you, I conceal carry. They could tell you that, but you can't ask them, do you conceal carry? I mean, that's the difference. So, I mean, if they tell you that, as long as it's not said in a threatening manner, okay. Does that make sense? Karen? Sorry. Karen?
Okay, so in our simulation center in nursing, we have a room where they put their backpacks, so they can't bring it with them into the center. They're wearing scrubs, which I don't think scrubs would be able to be concealing enough to have a gun. I mean, there's pockets, but you know, you've seen scrubs on nurses in hospitals, and I don't think it would be concealed. So, and I understand everything that you said, but is it okay for me to put in we have a student handbook with lots of rules, lots of policies. Can we put something in our handbook legally that says, for your simulation clinical days, you will need to keep your gun locked in your car? Can I say that? No, I can't say
No,
that.
you cannot say that.
So we just
In fact, you've asked that question, and I just haven't gotten back to you yet on that.
Okay. I was just going to ask you today, and I'd ask it. That was my main question.
So the rules could be viewed as violating rights. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So technically, and I've heard this in the state as an extreme example, and take it for what you will. So say I'm on a swim team, and if I think that I can conceal carry and swim with my waterproof weapon, if I think I can do that and keep it concealed, then I have the right to do that. So if there's some way they can conceal and wear scrubs, then they're completely allowed to do that.
So obviously throughout the day, if somebody notices that it is not concealed,
Then you make a phone call.
and we make that call.
Yeah. Bob, I'm sorry.
I was
One
just
more.
going to go ahead and clarify what the on this is about. My backpack doesn't have to be on, it could be right here at my side.
That's
so
correct.
I would be able to, so that was back on that, so. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear earlier. Yes, sir.
Who determines if a student saying to you, I conceal carry, is threatening? Who's the judge of that?
You are.
So every time a student says that to me, if I feel threatened by the fact that there is a gun in the room, I am entitled to say that that student is threatening me by telling me that information.
If you feel threatened, then you should call police.
Okay.
Having the weapon in the room, I don't know that that would justify in of itself feeling threatened, but that's not for us to decide. That's for you and the police to decide.
I would say in most classes, usually the problem with the student surfaces at the end. There are a lot of times for instructors, you have problems with a student that goes unreported. If you know the characteristics are there for a problem with that student, I would ask that you bring it to the BIT or COPS attention. I can tell you that I am carrying a weapon, and depending on how it's said, you can then make that determination, am I just telling you or am I threatening you? So put that with, let's say you're having a problem with that person. The problem combined with how it's said, to me, should be taken as a threat. It's an intimidation by that individual, maybe to get you to change his or her grade. So you take the whole scenario and look at it. And I always say, if a person is telling you who they are, that's exactly what they are. So if you're having problems with this person at the end, and somehow towards, or in the beginning, and somehow it comes up towards the end that he's telling you, then I would be concerned as an instructor, and I would notify the police, Cops Watch, BIT, or whomever, to allow us to look into the situation and see if there is a threat.
There's
Does everyone understand our BIT is our behavioral intervention team. There's a number of folks here that are involved in that, and that's if you have a concern, let them know, and there's a reporting mechanism on the website. So.
Christy?
Well, I was just going to go back to Randy's comment about a lot of unattended backpacks everywhere we go. We see them. Is there a protocol, whether we don't know if a gun is in an unattended backpack or not, is there a change in any kind of protocol or procedure if we see a backpack that's sitting in the commons or in the co-lab or in the library or in the bathroom unattended?
You notify the police.
Every time?
Yeah, for example, the other day I walked through the second floor of Rainier Center. Walked past, there was a backpack with the computer, no one around. So I picked it up, or I stayed there until I know the person was coming back. A young man came out of the bathroom, and I explained to him how easy his equipment can disappear, because it does here on campus. So he was somewhat startled by the fact that going to the bathroom, leaving it, was a concern of mine, and then I explained to him the circumstance. It's just like when you go to the airport, that big announcement that you hear, do not leave your suitcase unattended, goes the same with a backpack. Now, I'm not telling you to pick it up, but what you should do is call the police and say, I have an unattended backpack at this location, and allow us to come and recover it.
And we do that all the time.
In our area, it happens a lot, even though we do make it clear that they're not to be unattended.
Okay.
So,
Well, call us. And that's why we're here. Call us, let us recover it. We'll take it to our office, and they can walk over it and pick it up.
Well, and the best practice could be to encourage somebody walking away from personal property. You probably shouldn't leave that unattended. Then we don't have to be implying one thing or another, but you probably shouldn't leave that unattended. And if we did that, that may, you deal with a lot of, right now, theft. You know, it has nothing to do with the weapon, but unattended personal property.
And the one with unattended property is like that, the backpack, in recovery piece of property. Don't search through it, just go ahead and hold on to it and call us, we'll come and recover it. Sometimes professors or whoever, they collect it, they want to get a name so they can tell us. That kind of shortens our recovery period for notifying that individual. But if they come back, they review their property, and something is missing, then you're added into that element of the investigation. So if you just recover it, call us, we'll come and pick it up, and then that way the only thing you have to say is, hey, I found it in the hallway, I picked it up, I called you, and that's the end of that.
A couple more questions. I'm sorry, yes.
Well, I just wondered, do we have a sense of how many students we think are actually going to be concealing and carrying guns? I mean,
I don't think there's no way to know. You don't have to register, right?
So we know that we have a certain portion of the population that's under 21.
And we really have no right to ask them, or our employees for that matter. So, Brent?
In terms of reporting a violation,
Mm-hmm.
is this something that you would encourage people to utilize the Guardian app for? Or
You could.
strictly
You could. In the policy itself, if you'll look, there's several methods to contact police. Guardian, app, text, or phone call to police is one of them. So absolutely. I like that. Guardian app. Does everyone have it on their phone? Julie, get the Guardian app. Okay, we'll talk about that. Yes.
I was just going
Keith.
to add this in as a comment, I guess, to the concern about being threatened in the classroom. That if you feel like you need to report to police, but the situation's there and you don't want to call the police in front, the phone in the classroom, you can lift up the receiver, dial campus police, and just leave it off the hook if you need an officer to arrive, but you don't have the ability to communicate to an officer.
That assumes though that the phone is where the teacher is, and
Yeah.
that is not the case in any of the classrooms that I teach in.
No? Okay. Let me know what some of those classrooms are. I'd love to come and see them, if you don't mind. We've added podium phones everywhere, so, or most places.
There you go.
So I'd love to have a list.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quick clarification.
Yes.
Students can't ask one another if they're carrying?
Sure they can. I mean, you, pardon me?
Well, okay, when you said we couldn't ask them.
You could.
But they can ask each other.
Sure, they can talk about whatever they want.
In all probability, I mean, let's be realistic. In all probability, guns are on campus now. I mean, when you look at the law itself, to conceal carry, it is the law now. It just says that right now you can't bring it onto our campus.
No, it says you cannot bring it
Into our buildings.
Into the buildings, I stand corrected. But in all probability, it's here. We just don't get that call. We don't entertain those type of calls. So do we expect after July 1 to have an increased amount of calls? Yes. But that's our job to respond, to investigate, to look into each call that we receive, at which point we will investigate. If it is a policy violation, then we will deal with it as such. If it goes to an escalated point, then we will deal with that as well. So, as I tell audience when I deliver, my job is completely different from yours. You expect to go home at the end of the day. I don't have that luxury. So mentally, I deal with that. Don't put yourself in my position. Call the police, let us handle it, and we'll go from there.
I will just say, and I'm hoping this will put, not necessarily fears aside, but just maybe answer some additional questions. And it was in an article that I just recently read about Kansas schools going to conceal carry. There were two community colleges, Coffeyville and Independence, that did not elect the exemption status for the 4 years. So 4 years ago, they went to conceal carry. They took their signs down from their buildings, and there have been no reported incidents. Okay. We have a good colleague that we've been talking to throughout this process, and our committee has, in Texas, because the year previous to us going to conceal carry is when their schools went conceal carry, and they have had one report of a weapon since last August 1st, and it was several days after the fact that someone reported it. Not an active weapon, not an active threat, just a sighting of a weapon. So one situation. And I know the chief thinks maybe we'll get more calls, but it's a guess, and I anticipate maybe it won't change things a whole lot. So, and that's just my personal perspective. So, yes, sir.
I seem to recall at an earlier meeting of this type, I believe it may have been when you visited the Faculty Senate last year, there was discussion of open carry, which is noted here on this handout. At that time, it was said that open carry on campus is legal, just not in buildings. This says it is prohibited in open spaces.
Yeah, I don't.
Which is accurate?
So, open carry is not permitted on this campus, not outside, not inside. I don't know why I would have ever said that. It's never been. Concealed carry right now is allowed anywhere on this campus outside of our buildings. Does that make sense to everybody? It's only the buildings that right now currently that we can prohibit. Can a person have a weapon in their car today? Yes. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So if something was said to that, I very well was mistaken. So. All right. Any others before we move on? Okay. Good. So safety and security updates. So this is an important part of the COPS Advisory Committee. We've been very actively involved in these projects. And the first one I want to talk to you about is how many of you have heard about the emergency door lock pilot program? Okay, several of you. We held demos, 5 of them, last week, both on the main campus and at OHEC. There are 8 devices like this currently in effect in classrooms, and there's a listing of the classrooms here. ATB, Carlson Center, CLB, GEB, OCB, OHEC, Science, and Rainier Center. The difficult part is getting into one of the classrooms to see it, so that's why we offer the demo sessions, because classrooms are busy, classrooms are full. The idea behind this project, we kept hearing over and over, especially from faculty, that in a classroom with one door point of entry, I'm concerned that the only way that I know to lock my door, that I can lock my door, is to open it and swipe my badge on the card reader outside, and now my door is locked. We have installed these devices at or near the podium. So maybe in this room it would be right here. I flip this switch, and now my door is locked. I flip it back, and now it's in its normal functioning mode. So if I locked it, someone from the outside, we've tested it, cannot get in. You cannot test these devices singly, you have to test them in twos if you were going to play with it and test it. The reason I say that is if you flip the switch and go outside and check the door, yes, it's locked. No, you can't get back in through any means until you call the police and they use a key to open the door. So it's not a one-person try. It's a two-person try. So you have to have someone go out and be the trier, and then someone be the switch flipper, if you will. There's a survey that opened up Monday that we've sent on InfoList a couple of times this week. We need your feedback. Is this something that there's value in implementing in classrooms campus-wide? Your feedback will help make that determination and help factor in whether or not that money gets budgeted down the road and those kinds of things. So if you have not been to there's an FAQ about it on the COPS Emergency Preparedness InfoShare page. There's a link to it on InfoShare. The survey's out there. There's text open fields. Let us know your comments. Let us know your feedback. That's really important for us to be able to proceed with this pilot project and know if we should take it any further. Any questions about this project? It's really pretty simple. Karen?
I'm just curious, because we use CC 211 that has 2 points of entry on the second
Yeah.
and the third floor. Would something like this, if switched, lock both of those doors?
It could. It's just additional wiring to make that happen. It could. This room is another example of that, 2 points of entry.
Right.
So it would be a different setup, but it could be done. We've talked through that a couple of times. Yes, Jake.
I'm over at RC 232, so if anyone wants to come see that, I can't handle all of you at one time, but certainly.
Why not? No, I'm just kidding.
8 acres, and that's one of our computer lab spaces, so if by chance you want to come test it out or see it, you're welcome to ask, and we can hopefully just have a time where the 2 of us can try it. I'm happy to do that. So.
We used a lot of the demos in that room just because of its availability. So we appreciate you making that room available to us for the project too. Any thoughts, comments, suggestions?
Just make sure that you fill out the survey for us, please. If I'm on the COPS advisory committee, so please fill out the survey. Even if you did not attend the demo, please look at the questions and give it some thought and share with us, please.
Okay. If you need the survey link sent to you, email Alisa Pacer and I'll get you the link. Easy enough. Okay. Let's talk about this next project. There's kind of different names for it floating around out there, but the bottom line is there are so many points of entry to some of our buildings. Why do we have so many? And by reducing those public access entry points to a building, we can focus our safety and security efforts on those main walkways and points of entry, if that makes sense. From both a patrol security standpoint, police patrol, and also camera functionality. Okay, so I brought up the Carlson Center as an example, and partially because this is also the first building that this will be done in. So the Carlson Center building will be a pilot for the rest of the campus. We are formulating a list now, and folks, we're not doing it to inconvenience folks, we're doing it to further secure our buildings and what makes sense. And we would not only restrict entrances to the public, but many of them would still be open to employees through card access. Okay, so let's talk through this example. I hope it's large enough for everybody to see. So in the Carlson Center building, there are 2 entry points that are truly restricted access. And when I say that, typically only maintenance or police department personnel use these entrances. And those are indicated with the blue. So they would not be signed. They're not part of, technically, this project, but I wanted to mark them just to show you. The red arrows are doorways, after reviewing this building, that we've deemed as non-necessary public entry points that will be marked, like the sign that you see here, that said, not a public entrance, employee access only. So if you carry your badge with you, or you will be encouraged to carry your badge with you so you can still go all your secret little ways, okay? Otherwise, you'll want to go the main ways that most people go in the building, like the north end of the Carlson Center. There's this little side door by the stairway. When this main entry point is just next to it, why does this little door need to be open? Maybe it doesn't. This is a dock area. Docks are dangerous. Maybe we don't want that to be a public access area, possibly. And this other side door is kind of a creepy way to come in to the building anyway. So, and this is creepy. So the point to this is by funneling folks through the building strategically, you can monitor your safety and security efforts as an improved mechanism. So the Carlson Center will be the first project you see by the end of the month. You should see signs like this in place. You can test them. You can make sure your employee ID badge allows you access to them. And we're testing it out, getting feedback, seeing how it goes. Hopefully there aren't any huge concerns. And again, it's safety and security giving up and risk giving up a little bit of inconvenience possibly. Okay? But as employees, technically this project should not affect you. Okay? But it is something that if students ask or as we go forward with this, we'll have to communicate about it. But with the signage, hopefully that makes it clear for everyone. Are there any questions about this project? Yes, sir.
Especially at night, oftentimes you come across those doors propped open.
Oh.
And I can still picture, especially on the east side of Carlson, those doors being propped open during the day.
So these over here? Yes, ma'am. Chief, you want to talk about propped open doors?
Yeah, so going forward with our automated center, we will look at each door and make sure that the alarm is in place. What could very well happen is that the alarm right now is not activated. That is a possibility. because every time you prop a door open for X amount of minutes, it should trigger an alarm. So as we go towards July 1st, we are going to check every door in every building that is accessible to everyone, or even the restricted doors when they are held open for X period of time. An alarm should be triggered. It will mean an increased amount of calls for the police department, but that's okay. It's one of those things that we know are coming. We will work diligently with access control, the IS department, to make sure that every door should be alarmed, that when it is prompted, it will notify my communication center, who will no longer waive it in their system and not dispatch an officer to investigate. And that could be very well what has taken place. The propped open door, they see the alarm, they get on the camera and notice that it is someone from housekeeping, or they may recognize the individual and they do not dispatch a police officer to investigate. They will no longer have that option. All alarms will be responded on.
Yes. Yes.
So with the alarms, will those be silent alarms, or will those be vocal alarms that sound off that you can?
You won't know. Silent alarm in the communication center.
And folks, if I could just add, so when an exterior door to a building is propped open, that's a big deal. It's a big deal for a lot of reasons. Number one, if we had to lock that building down quickly, it violates our capability to do that in a exterior threat kind of scenario. So just keep in mind that propping doors open is not okay. It's a training issue, and we'll get there. So I believe that we'll get there quickly.
And you see it prop open, please close it. A lot of times it's an object in the door. Certain buildings, I know they do it to, I can think of over here in OCB, that back area by the music center, that one door that goes up the steps. We usually find that propped open with a stone. Students say the air doesn't circulate through it. Well, I get that. Or sometimes they'll come out towards the very end to play their instrument. But if you see it, if you do not want to close it, please call the police and we'll come by and close it. But again, with the updated alarm checking and making sure everything works, we should get that notification in the communication center.
Okay, good thoughts, good feedback. Any additional questions before we talk about our last project? No? Okay. So I think you've heard at a previous town hall and in some messaging from Dr. Larson in general to the campus. We've been upgrading slowly our camera security system, which is a really big deal. Sandra can say it's a really big deal. James can say it's a really big deal. With the cooperation of information services, access control, a huge undertaking and project and budgetary item. So with the camera system upgrade across campus, I just want to let you know some of the improved features, and it's not rocket science, it's just larger images, better color, higher resolution, more detail while zooming in, and we have the pan, tilt, zoom capability literally so you can see a room from different angles and those kinds of things. And camera positioning. So where I may have seen someone's feet before, now I see their whole body. Does that make sense? So I have a few examples just to show you. And we've been told that they're public entry places so that the photos are okay. Just FYI. Okay, so I hope that you can see this. And if you could see the real camera system, which I'm sure that someday maybe that will happen. This is a view in the library where you can see in the back here things get really faded. It's really dark. We can zoom in on this plant. We can zoom in on these books and see letters and labels and names and numbers. Through this entry point, faces, shoes, colors. I know this is kind of it's hard to see apples and apples, or apples and oranges, but you can see the improved clarity in the picture. And if you ever get a chance to see a demo of the system, it's really impressive. So we're really excited about that. This is another, and I had one of our officers explain this to me. So this is an entry point to the library where this person, it looks like his jacket is navy, black shoes, maybe reddish hair. But if I look at this person, I can see very clearly that the jacket is green. He pointed out some things to me that, I may not, as a non-officer, I may not notice, but he's like, I can see the Nike swoosh. I know what type of shoes this person is wearing, which is just another way to delineate a suspect description, or those not inferring this person as a suspect. The red shirt. So really clear information, better details about descriptions and those kinds of things. When we're backtracking theft information and those kinds of things. This is an example of an improved view where a camera used to be here and I might see a really good top of the head kind of thing. And now I can see the person in general just by a change in camera positioning. So the camera that's now in this space is not where the old camera was, but is now in a different location, which makes more sense. And as I said earlier, when we're talking about limiting public access to certain entry locations, by focusing our cameras on the public entry spaces, that just allows us enhanced security for those areas and flow of traffic within and out of our buildings. So I'm feeling really good about that. So just a few examples that we wanted to show you and know that this is happening. Do we want to give an update on anything else?
Well, sir, we're going from about 350 cameras college-wide to, by the end of this phasing, which is really by 1920 or 1819.
I would expect we'll finish, probably by December of that fiscal year. So,
right.
So by December of 2018.
Right. We will be complete, and then we'll be closer to 530 cameras. So we're adding them, and the clarity. This is going from analog to digital, so that as Alisa talks about being able to zoom in, I mean, you don't lose that pixelation, if I'm saying it correctly. And again, I've seen images where there was someone sitting in those chairs through that window in that image, and you could clearly, if we knew who that was, you would recognize them. So the difference in clarity is really outstanding.
To assist with our after the fact efforts for the police department, anything in progress, tracking someone through our buildings, and some of the buildings that have never had either a lot of cameras or some areas that haven't had cameras are now being covered. So we're really excited about that too. Sandra, anything to add on that?
We are working really hard to get this phase implemented. Cameras and infrastructure that was funded in fiscal year 16 and 17, which would really provide 300 cameras that will supplant some of that 350. So again, just know for a period of time, we don't lose the original 350 except when they were in the exact same socket. So again, there will be cameras we choose to take down in that process. But again, all the coverage that we have today remains, and it only improves. And again, looking to have all of that in place by graduation.
Chief, any comments on cameras? Okay. Okay. So just please know that as the COPS Advisory Committee chair, I think it's important that we share the information with this campus about safety and security projects in general, whether they're in relation to concealed carry or not. Just know that those improvement or enhancements are happening and that we do take it seriously. It is a priority. We'll take any of your questions and comments that you have for us at this time. Yes, sir.
So the individual's concealing a firearm, and say the shirt goes up and it flashes the butt of the handgun. Someone calls the police department, what kind of infractions would happen to that individual that, as they bent over, part of the gun just flashed for a second and they quickly covered it again? What kind of violations would a police officer issue to them in that situation?
So if you read our FAQs document that's on the, each infraction is going to be judged on a case-by-case basis. We have some representatives from our student areas in here. I don't want to put you on the spot, Dr. Weber, Paul. Do you want to speak to any of that?
I'll just say we regularly have to try to measure intent when we have a violation of the student code of conduct. And it's the same thing HR would probably say with employees. So we have violations, not all violations are created the same. One of the interesting things about this law is that a violation of the law is different than a violation of the policy. Because a violation of the law is not an arrestable offense. So if they violate our policy, we'll have to determine what the consequence is, and a lot of that is going to have to rely on intent. So we have things that we give individuals warnings. We do no trespassing, so we have a lot of latitude as to what we do, but a lot of it will have to be on what we believe the intent is, as is the case with any other violation of the student code of conduct or employee code of conduct.
Good, thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was exactly, I didn't know if there was, kind of set in stone or if it was going to be fluid like that.
I think it has to be, the whole incident or circumstance in collection. So, other questions, thoughts, comments?
For the chief, perhaps, or for you, would there be any events going forward after July 1st on campus where temporary adequate security measures would be strongly considered, like a graduation, naturalization ceremonies, things that happen here on a regular basis?
That could. For example, on our doorsteps right now is the Jewish community program that we put on. We work with their intelligence group, their police department, along with the FBI, along with a liaison from the FBI to let us know if there are any perceived threats. If we believe that to be the case, then we will say to that organization, in order for you to rent our space, adequate security measures must be in place. For example, when we had the political functions here on campus, that is also a probability that we can go back to whether it's the Republican Party or the Democratic Party to say, we feel that it is a danger to the college community, therefore we're asking you to put those protection pieces in place. It is their option, but it is our ability to dictate what is good for the safety of the campus. So in that case, if we perceive a threat, if all intelligence information from the different group, Dan Robles belonged to an intelligence group locally that he attends on a regular basis. If there's anything coming in to tell us that it's a threat, then we will ask the campus or the college not to have that event on campus. I know Mr. Hoyer worked diligently when he is booking events to try and get any inside information from an organization, from a company, if there are any internal issues that they're going to bring here to our campus. So we're looking at all angles going forward to determine if a particular event would be damaging to JCCC as a whole.
So, I mean, the police department will have final say on event management for temporary adequate security measures going forward after July 1. Yes?
If a temporary adequate security measure area is put together, is that going to be announced like on info list, like parking restrictions, just so we're aware that, because it's not something we would it's not a routine, it's not a permanent thing. So just we're aware when we're entering something.
Yeah.
We can tell students that, hey, this area's been set up for this today or this week.
I would think the answer is yes to that, but I also know that it requires signage and perimeter setup and those kinds of things. So you wouldn't likely enter an area that you didn't know was already part of that. But I understand what you're saying. That's a good point. Other questions? Yes?
Will there ever be a list of where we employ the cameras available, people want to know?
I'm going to go off on a limb here, but I would likely say no. And the reason I say that is we don't typically publish safety and security behind the scenes kind of things like that, because that's intelligence that's related to our safety and security individuals. So we wouldn't want everyone to have that information.
And what places on campus can people have confidence they're not employed?
I'm sorry, say that again?
What places on campus can people have confidence they're not being used? Cameras.
Cameras? Well, I know that every building that I see that has cameras also has to have the closed captioning signage that shows that cameras are being used. So.
No, I was asking what areas can somebody be confident that cameras aren't?
Okay, so, okay, sorry, restrooms, locker rooms. We aren't allowed to put cameras in those areas. But the cameras are visible, so they're not hidden cameras, I guess is my point.
Unless they're being, specifically kept, those images are going to be kept for how long before they're dropped on the system?
I don't know the exact answer to that, but I know that the industry standard is typically 30 days. So, any other thoughts, Chief?
No, we're going to look at increasing anywhere from 30 days to 90 days, simply because we found that incidents that we have to investigate may come to us after a 30-day period. So it is crucial for us to maintain that video. So it's under consideration to increase the time that we store. But that is something that we will take up with legal in our record retention review and make sure that we are in compliance.
Good question. What else? Thoughts, questions, comments?
So you said hidden cameras will not be used on campus?
I don't know that I said that. I said there shouldn't.
Well, you said that most of them would be hidden, or there wouldn't necessarily per se be hidden cameras. Will there be, because you said most of them will be in plain view.
Cameras are in plain view. Cameras are in plain view. Yes, sir.
Can we get a solid answer, not today necessarily, but published somewhere, perhaps when you attend the Faculty Senate in a couple weeks, on how long images will be retained and scope, and is that policy, and if it's not policy, is it going to be policy? There's very real concern, and we're hearing it here, that we're creating a higher surveillance state here on campus.
I don't know.
And
okay.
That's,
So we're enhancing, but we've.
that's what surveillance states always say about what they're doing. And again,
Okay.
I'm not saying there isn't a security elevation that comes with that, but we at least have a right to know where, as to the best of our ability, where we're being surveilled. If it's going to be in classrooms, that wasn't on the list, you just said. All of the details. We would like a lot more detail, please. I'm requesting this as Faculty Senate President on behalf of the Senate. That would be lovely.
Okay.
I think we can guarantee you that I don't think there are any cameras in the classroom.
Okay. And that's historically been the case. I just didn't know this.
And we are maintaining that same standard. The increasing cameras that you've heard are basically covering buildings that maybe to your knowledge you were not aware a camera was not there. So as we provide a better safe campus, we had to increase those cameras to where we didn't previously have them stored. You talk about the retention of the video. It is a police record that we are governed by as to how long we will keep those. It has nothing to do with creating a police state for the campus or violating maybe your right as an individual, like Big Brother is watching you. No, that's not the case. But we are looking at extending the time within the law boundaries that we have. And again, I will get with legal, we will look at the record retention, and Alisa Pacer can get you that information later on.
That would be great, thank you.
But also, Chief, just, I mean, if you have reason to believe that something may have occurred, you're gonna retain that longer anyhow.
Yes.
Somebody
That's
says,
correct.
Capture this, sometimes it's subpoenaed, sometimes there's other.
If it's a case
so it doesn't
file,
all
yeah.
go away. So we capture it, because that would be hard to say everything's gone in 30 days or everything, because they would retain something for that.
But is that policy published somewhere?
Within my police department, yes. In review of my record retention, when I meet with general counsel, we go over every aspect of record keeping for the police department to make sure I am within that compliance for the state of Kansas. For example, a documented criminal history piece I'm allowed to keep anywhere from 3 years to 5 years, depending on the certain circumstance. So we look at every category for my department to make sure I am in compliance, not only for the state, but also for what the college says is accepted.
Okay. All right, anything else? No? Okay.
Can I just?
Oh, sure, please.
I just want
Close us
to
up.
make sure to publicly thank the members of the COPS committee. I see a number of you in here, and especially those who contributed to the video. And again, I think it's going to be a very helpful tool. Thanks to Dean Kyle for being our director for that, and for all of those that were on camera and participated in that. So again, I hope that you'll find that helpful, and we will continue to update the campus as things happen, change,
Progress.
to keep you aware. All right? Thank you
So
very much.
thank you all for coming today.